You ready, Jose?
I'm ready to go.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Filmocracy Talks, a bi-weekly open forum where we discuss topics filmmakers care about. I'm Paul Jun, CEO of Filmocracy, and I'm joined by Jose Escorcia, our very talented filmmaker and producer of the show. A little bit about how this will work. I'll kick it off with Jose, and as the discussion progresses, you can write in the chat box, ask and vote on questions, or raise your hand, at which point I'll make you a co-presenter and the forum will begin. In this space, there's few enough people that we can just have everybody with their cameras on at once if we want. So we'll talk until we run out of breath, have a brief intermission where we can network in smaller groups and come back and share what we discussed. Before we begin, with all of the continued protests with Black Lives Matter, we don't want to forget about what's happening there. Jose, you can do your shout out.
As you know, the Black Lives Matter movement is bigger than ever before, and now more than ever, we all need to gather together as human beings and fight for a change. If you're curious to know how you can help, here are some options. 8can'twait.org details how we can reduce police violence by 72% with some simple changes. There, you can find a link to Campaign Zero where you can donate for the cause. Your contribution will go a long way. If you're interested in learning more about this movement and want to contribute, whether it be financially or just by learning more about the Black Lives Matter movement, please visit blacklivesmatter.carrd.co. Link will be in the description and in the chat, as well as being linked to a wide variety of petitions for the cause and links to donate. And if you don't have any money to donate, it's alright, especially in the climate that we are in now. There are options to donate without having to pay a dime. Clicking on the donate link will direct you to YouTube videos that revolve around the Black Lives Matter movement and topics revolving racial inequality. The videos will have ad space, and the revenue made from watching the videos will directly support the Black Lives Matter movement. Also, follow us on our social media pages if you're looking for a list of masterful film works that center around African American artists, culture, history, and stories. Please check out our handpicked films on our Instagram or our blog on filmocracy.com. Links in the description and in the chat. Everyone is doing their part for a better future. Join us. Join the movement. Let's make a change together.
It's really exciting. I'm really excited for the topic we're going to discuss. We have Jon here who's going to basically break down something that I'm personally excited about, which is Filmocracy Fest. He's going to kind of give us an in-depth explanation, look of what to expect with the Filmocracy Fest. And it's just something that I personally think is going to be a little game-changing, especially how everything is going on right now with a lot of film festivals trying to quickly figure out a solution in order to get their festivals to still continue on. So either canceling them or trying to change their format with an online version of their festivals. So it's a very interesting time right now, and I think that Filmocracy has kind of figured out this really cool hybrid way of kind of mixing best of both worlds with this online festival idea mixed with the in-person approach. And we have Jon here, like Paul said, that he's here to basically explain it to us. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what this is all about.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that, Jose. And again, links to the organizations you mentioned are in the side chat. And as Jose said, we're going to be talking about festivals. And Jon Fitzgerald is joining us. He has 25 years of experience in independent film, internet, and film festival communities. As a filmmaker, he's produced a number of award-winning documentaries. And as a consultant, he's guided many independent film projects through the maze of festivals and hybrid distribution models. Previously, he was the co-founder of SlamDance, festival director for AFI. He later created a consulting business, guiding the launch of numerous film festivals and directing several others, and consulting to dozens more. He's also the founder of iGems.tv, which is a guide to engaging movies and series. He's also the founder of Film Festival Mastery, which is a new project that he undertook, which is very interesting, and I'm sure Jon will talk about that a bit more. And he is also our head of acquisitions at Filmocracy. Jon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
I think what we'll do is we'll just start opening it up. I know Jose is just itching to ask you questions that he disappears. So we've been having some video troubles. Basically how this works is we're just going to have a conversation, picking your brain, asking you to talk about festivals, Filmocracy Fest, the state of the industry, and just going at it. Jose, you're back. You want to kick it off?
Yeah, so I think that the best way to start is for Jon to kind of just give us like a brief synopsis of what Filmocracy is all about and what we're trying to achieve with this new hybrid style film festival.
Sure. Well, I think when Paul and I first started talking about this idea, the concept was really, frankly, it was right before COVID hit that we were brainstorming this idea. And the idea was, what could we do to kind of elevate the experience of film festivals? Because, when I was doing SlamDance in 95, we kicked it off. There were maybe 500 film festivals. Now there's over 9,000. So how are these festivals differentiating from each other? And what's special? What's your identity? And we're coming up with all these different ideas that we could integrate into this, what we were calling our live festival at the time. And we were talking about everything from table reads to, table script readings to, taping sessions and incorporating pitch programs, of course, a lot of networking opportunities. And then COVID hit. And so while we were thinking about really doing some of the things that happen at a traditional festival, right, where you've got the galas and the red carpet screenings, you've got networking opportunities, you've got conference elements, then everybody started taking everything online. And so it kind of forced us to rethink a bit. And fortunately for us, and what Paul and you guys have all built is this amazing platform that is essentially, gamifying the watching of movies. And I think it's amazing for me as somebody who comes from the traditional festival world to be able to have an opportunity to kind of work in this new, what we're calling a hybrid space, really, because I think obviously with Remo, what we're talking on now, there's a lot of to do breakout sessions and table reads and just involve a lot more people that you couldn't really do before. And even if the technology was kind of there with some companies, there was a hesitation. And I think what's happening now is we're seeing, and I'll give you guys some examples, but we're seeing some festivals that made the quick pivot. They were able to bring on a technology partner, whether it was, Shift 72 or Eventive or one of these companies, and they put everything online really quickly. And what they found was that more people, even if they geo-blocked it in their region, like hot docs, you had to be in Ontario, but they still were able to sell a ton of admissions because people didn't all have to come to the theater. So even though we missed the opportunity there, it opened up opportunity to have more people come and experience, and some people that couldn't always come to an award show got to see an award show online. So I do think there is a silver lining here, and I'm sure we'll talk more about COVID later, but the idea of doing this with Filmocracy, because they have this platform already in place and they're now working with Remo, it just gives us an opportunity to roll up our sleeves and get as creative as we can to take some of the existing elements that happen in a film festival, whether it's a screening or a conference or just a networking opportunity, and bring them online, and more people get to participate.
Yeah, that's awesome. And since you mainly talked about the online part of it, how do you guys plan on handling like the in-person? Like you guys said, you're doing like this hybrid best of both worlds kind of thing. So are we essentially going to rent out a theater, or how do these in-person?
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan. I mean, certainly I'm a cinephile. I've got the film degree. I mean, look at the posters. I've got these classic posters. I love movies. I love going to movies. But the truth is, I I do believe in kind of non-traditional venues in a film festival environment. I certainly think, look, I did Life is Beautiful at the Man's Chinese with 1,600 people. I mean, it doesn't get more exciting than that. But when you can bring people together in a bunch of different buildings or rooms and situations, I mean, I've done them on a beach, I've done them in auditoriums. I think having non-traditional venues just makes it different, right? And a film festival is supposed to be festive. It's supposed to be an experience. It's not just going to the movies and going home. So I think that we're gonna do some really interesting things. It's too early to announce venues, but we're gonna have multiple venues screening films. We're gonna have receptions. There's gonna be networking opportunities. There's gonna be keynotes. All of that's gonna happen. It's just probably not gonna take place in a multiplex where you're spread out, and they're only selling 25% of the seats anyway. It will probably have us create more of a lounge situation where you're spread out, but you're comfortable. And one venue will be different on Friday than you have on Saturday. So it'll open up the community a bit more than a traditional festival might this year.
What's also an advantage to that is that there's something about working in like a virtual void, meaning like when you have such an empty plane, you can design like the specific design choices of the event. Normally when you'd rent out a space, you're dictated by that space.
Yep.
But in the virtual world, you can kind of be very selective in what kind of experience you want to craft, which I think is going to be exciting.
Yeah, it makes it more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an expo, because then you could actually bring in equipment, sponsors to show things a little bit, so it has more hands-on for people to see stuff and interact. Like an expo,
it'll be more intimate in some ways. Even though I think there will be some social distancing. I mean, you won't have 1,000 people, coming to a tented party in the same format that we're used to seeing. But we will have the solutions, and I think the truth is the event's scheduled for December 3rd through the 6th. So theaters are going to open up at the end of July, hopefully. And we'll see how that goes. And, things could be different in December.
The beautiful thing about it is the options. And I think that's the best thing that we could do right now is giving out the option of more choice of online or in person. And I think that's the best move to do.
Yeah. And I think another interesting thing about this, I'm sorry, I'm near an airport, so occasionally going to hear a plane. The idea of audience participation, I think, and Filmocracy certainly gets that with their whole, rewarding and treasure chest and popcorn. But I think the idea of some of these movies might be geo-blocked because we don't want to hurt future distribution opportunities for some filmmakers. But a number of filmmakers will have already been through the festival circuit, but they haven't played online yet, or they haven't maximized their audience potential. So we can bring those movies out to a bigger audience than they would ever get if they just played a live festival here in Los Angeles. So it does create more opportunities, I think, for filmmakers and for audiences.
One technical question that maybe filmmakers out there who might be listening to this might be interested in is, when you say you can geo-block films, would you in this hypothetical virtual space be able to geo-lock certain screenings, or is it the whole event locked is what you
can? You can. It gets more complicated to do it like within a section, but there are ways to do it. I'm not the tech half of our business model, but
theoretically,
but in theory it can work. I know that some festivals have geo-blocked certain sections and not geo-blocked others. I know, for example, CPH Docs in Denmark geo-blocked their screenings, but they did their talks live and public. And now on YouTube, we were just talking, Hans and I, we were just talking about the fact that they did a talk with Ed Snowden, and it's been seen by 96,000 people.
Wow.
You know, so there are ways to cover both sides, and I think, you know, look, Toronto is the biggest festival in North America. They usually show over 300 movies. They're only showing 50 movies this year, offline, live. So it's affecting everybody, but the virtual space is, I think, very exciting.
Now, John, like I said, I had questions ready for you, but there was one thing I didn't know, and it was that you were the founder or one of the founders of SlamDance, if I'm correct. So you're saying that you're part of basically the success of finding the success, Christopher Nolan, Oren Peli,
Russo brothers,
Jared Hess. We've never gotten to Napoleon Dynamite without you. Basically, this is crazy. You have me geeking out right now. Like, I did not know.
I can't take credit for I can't take credit for Napoleon Dynamite,
but you had you still gave those actors. Yeah. Just Nolan alone is like, holy crap! But you gave them that platform.
Yeah, we showed their first movie.
Their work, and it's awesome. I'm almost speechless.
Thank you for that. The truth is, you know, something Paul and I are really fond of is the idea of supporting emerging talent. And I think what SlamDance was, you know, 3 filmmakers who didn't get into Sundance and said, well, we're not just going to go cry about it. We're going to go start our own festival. So it was kind of a stunt for our own movies, but it struck a nerve, and, you know, the festival still prides itself in, I only ran it for 3 years, but it still prides itself in a festival by filmmakers for filmmakers, and it's mostly first-time directors. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of big filmmakers have come out of there. And I think what Paul and I want to do is be able to bring that a sense of that discovery to Filmocracy Fest, right? Because audiences want to discover new filmmakers just as much as Hollywood does.
Can we just clarify one thing? Whether Jose was born before SlamDance was founded or after?
95. I think he might have frozen though. So I don't know. I think he might have just got himself off the hook.
He was so stunned by this question.
It is funny. I have to say, you know, it really dates me. But the truth is, for something that started so small to still be going strong, and I mean, over 25 years later, it's a pretty cool thing. You know, I don't think about it a lot, but it tends to be one of those things where I'm in a conversation with somebody and, oh, you were a co-founder at SlamDance. Like, if you're in independent cinema in some way, shape, or form, you've heard of SlamDance. So I guess that's kind of a cool thing.
Well, honestly, like in a world now where everything's kind of like build and sell, build and get rid of, like, it's cool that you created something that is long lasting, you know, like that's really remarkable and special.
It's kind of fun. I did a festival. It's on the opposite side of the spectrum. So SlamDance, our first year, we spent about 10 grand, and I did an event in 2007, I believe, in Abu Dhabi.
Oh wow!
Which is the richest country in the world.
Yeah.
And they had a budget of $10 million.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it's crazy. But the reason I brought it up is because that festival didn't last, right? Really? They have plenty of money. They could have kept doing it, but it was
all the resources, but
they were just trying to buy culture, right? They wanted to do this event at the Emirates Palace. We're going to fly the filmmakers in and give them all, you know, trips and business class travel, and they stayed at the Emirates Palace, and yeah, it was crazy. And they said, how do we get on the map in the first year? I said, let's give away $1 million in prizes. And that tends to get attention, but sure. They just moved on to the next thing they felt like trying, right? They did it for 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, and they're gone.
Yeah. Well, you approach it more like what I would call like a farmer, where you kind of like you keep the crops growing, right? Like
Farmer John.
John,
we have a question from Sean. He's asking, what is SlamDance's plan for this next year after hearing about TIFF and Sundance switching to a hybrid format? Is SlamDance planning anything like that? Do you know?
I think SlamDance is certainly going to be making some announcements pretty soon because, we've seen Sundance. Hey, we've seen Sundance make some announcements. To be totally honest with you, not to dodge the question, but I haven't really been part of SlamDance for a number of years now, and I haven't seen a press release from them lately. I read the trades pretty regularly, and I read IndieWire every day. I haven't seen a whole lot of news. As far as I know, they're still doing the screenplay competition. They're still planning on being in Park City. They're gonna have screenings, but there's no doubt that they're gonna have some type of online element as well. I don't know that they'll want to go as far as Sundance is doing now, where they're trying to essentially book events in other cities now.
Yeah, it's like 23 cities, I think, or something like that now.
I did not know that. That you're saying it's Sundance?
It's a very complicated thing. I've been talking to a lot of people about it. And it's got festivals in those regions a little bit concerned, to say the least, because they're essentially going to be bringing these movies that would normally be going out after Park City and playing some of these smaller festivals in these regions. But if they're going to play concurrent with Sundance in these regions, then what's that going to do to that regional festival? So that's a whole other topic.
This is like the downside of festivals coming online is now, like, even though all these smaller festivals have a potentially wider audience, so do the bigger festivals that can just, like, if I'm going to pay $5 to go to local hokey dokey small town festival, maybe I'll just spend the extra $20 to go to Sundance.
Well, I mean, we're also, I don't know if Paul mentioned it, John. We already are been talking with South by filmmakers from this year. And as soon as the LA theater kind of opens up safely, we're doing a special screening series for them. We have over 55 filmmakers, creators interested.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're going to plan out probably like a week to 2 weeks. I mean, Penny, we're probably not going to get that many. Like when it's all said and done, it'll probably end up being like 35 or so, I imagine. But that's kind of a start. And then we're going to go from there and kind of build out our network domestically first, partnering. We've already started talking to art houses. So bringing the communities the content. So that way filmmakers can get a kind of a DIY distribution with less hassle of them doing it themselves. And then in turn, we're talking with Oracle right now in creating a platform to digitize the data and analytics from that. So that way they take it to the distributors and get better deals off it because they have the traction.
Yeah, you should talk to Bunker 15. They're working with a lot of filmmakers to get some reviews, which also helps with
oh, nice.
The Lemley's Music Hall. Have you heard what happened to them? You should talk to them too.
That's who we're partnered with.
Perfect.
We're not the Lumiere Cinema.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. That's a great idea. You should also talk with the Film Festival Alliance folks, because I think it's too soon to really tell, but there's something brewing here with the whole idea of, I don't know, I'm going to call it a festival release for lack of a better term instead of a theatrical release, where you've got what's happening here, where you've got all these movies that are going to festivals now, and especially the bigger films, and they're getting screening fees. They're getting some of them are even getting revenue share on the box office. And now you've got these festivals going online. Most of them aren't offering screening fees or revenue. Yeah. Some are, but it's got filmmakers talking. And so now with the new model coming, I think what we're going to see is more and more filmmakers asking for a piece of the pie. And what makes you think, I don't know. I feel like if, let's say right? You got a film that was a festival movie, right? It was going to play the circuit, and it went and played a bunch of movies or a bunch of festivals. If those festivals would give a revenue share or a screening fee, each of them, to that filmmaker could make, 50, 100 grand, which is probably more than they're going to make with their other distribution opportunities if somebody doesn't give them an MG. So there's a lot of interesting things on the table here, and I don't know. Paul and I kind of batted some ideas around last week. It's too soon to tell, but I think pay attention to IndieWire. There's a lot of good stories coming out. Ira Deutschman wrote a great piece the other day. Yeah, you should check out. It's
such a interesting time. Sorry.
It's really kind of hard with that though, with the festival side, because especially with virtual right now, you're not seeing as many committed attendees, even if they have Q&A events. Like, to get viewers for virtual events or even at regular festivals, it's building up that traction as a filmmaker, and you can't guarantee outside your market that you're going to be able to get attendees to attend your films. And for festivals, they have to concentrate on the most popular ones. So to give revenue shares for every filmmaker, it's like it would be really tough on the festivals themselves too.
It will be, but well, go ahead.
As we talk about this, I'm learning more and more the circumstances that you guys are sort of juggling in this changing times. So I kind of want to go back to a point you said earlier when you said hybrid festivals, and now you're saying virtual. When I understand the concept of a virtual festival, but when you say hybrid festival, what do you mean? Does that entail like some people might be able to go to the physical event while others watch it? Yeah. So what are examples?
It's like what we're going to do with Filmocracy.
To the event?
Yeah. It's what we were talking about with Filmocracy Fest. We will have live events and we will have online events. So that's what we mean by hybrid. There are a lot of festivals that when COVID hit, you had tons of them, right? You had Ashland, you had Hot Dogs, you had all these festivals. They just had to make that jump, and they were all online.
Pure virtual.
There's no hybrid thing happening. They're all online. What we're starting to see now is festivals announcing, like Toronto, they're going to have 50 screenings, and so we're going to start seeing more and more festivals that have both on and offline. And I think just to put a button on that point is, I think the idea that these festivals have seen now, almost by forfeit, is that there are audiences out there who will pay a fee and watch the movie online, and they've kind of opened up to audiences that may not have come before. And having said that, you've got festivals that have a huge community. To your point, Sean, like, yeah, if you go outside your community, that may not do well for some of the smaller regional festivals. Or what do you do if it's a destination festival, right? Then everything's off. But you look at Hot Docs and you look at CPH Docs, those festivals were expanded the numbers in their communities.
Could that result in maybe like, let's call them mergers for now, where maybe it'll become popular for like those smaller festivals to become rooms in another or something like that? Like, it's kind of a way to sort of, I don't know.
I think all bets are off. I think everything's changing. It's evolving. And I just did a talk on this last week. I did a course on film festival management, essentially how to produce a film festival. And, I think the sad truth is it's not going to be the same for everybody, right? You've got Industry Fest, you've got Destination Fest, you've got community events, and they don't all play the same rules. So
that's true.
It's not going to work the same for everybody. One of these women came on a panel a few weeks ago and said, "Look, I can't geo-block. It doesn't do me any good. That limits my audience." But she didn't have any movies that Netflix is going to acquire. Is kind of my guess. So it brings up a lot of questions, and that's why I came back to the filmmaker hat, right? Because I think at the end of the day, a festival doesn't survive without the films. And for many years, festivals kind of got to rest on the laurels of, we're going to promote your movie. We're going to have these big parties. We're going to put you up in a hotel. It's going to be a great experience for you. Don't ask us for money or screening fees. Just, come out and let us do our thing. And then we started seeing more screening fees take place. And now festivals are hurting. A lot of festivals can't afford to fly you out. The hotel industry is getting killed. So the hospitality partners are going down. Mm-hmm. So now what? Mm-hmm. So if you don't have to pay to rent that theater, and you're not going to fly me in and put me up, give me a piece of that somehow.
Well, that's the exciting part to me is I think the pioneers thrive on new horizons, right? And this is all a new horizon. So that's where we have to put on that creative hat and figure out how to extract like a new, like financially feasible but exciting version of what is important to preserve, you know? Yeah.
What do you think, John, what do you think about, like, I'm part of this email group for art house independent theaters, and they're constantly just writing back and forth to each other, like, what do we do? How do we get people back in our theaters? Is anyone doing like online screenings? Like, your customers are paying transaction VOD rates and it's split between the provider and the distributor or something, but like they are also trying to get in this mix, and now we're all sort of like blended into the internet. Like, is this a streaming thing? Is this a theater thing? Is this a festival? Aren't they all kind of the same now? Like, what do you think about all of that?
I think that is the melting pot that we're finding ourselves in now, and that's in fact what I think Ira was speaking to. It's affecting festivals, it's affecting distributors, it's affecting sales agents, and it's affecting, you know, the audiences, right?
Yes, you just said that.
An article today, they were saying, like, look, if you go to a movie with your spouse and you're going to spend whatever $15 a pop on 2 tickets, so that's $30, right? If they're going to watch it at home now, are you going to charge them $30? Are they going to get to stream it for $9.99? Or are you going to have an honor system? Like, everybody's going to have their own deal. And I think what's been interesting in terms of just a common theme in these articles is that I think that the distributors are the ones that are going to have the toughest time. They're the ones trying to figure it out now, right? Because festivals aren't going anywhere, especially if they've got a community and they've been around a while. They've got a following. They've got people they can reach. They certainly have access to the media to reach more people. And filmmakers aren't going anywhere, right? It's as cheap as ever to make a movie now. Forget about the new rules for a moment, but let's just assume that we're going to continue to start seeing production ramp up again. I think distributors are the ones that are having the toughest time trying to figure out where they fit in.
And I think you're right. And the specific target reason is because the geography is just so abstract in the virtual world. And when you think of distribution, you kind of have to put a map in your head. But that map is, I think, changing because, like you said, some people, every filmmaker has a different reason for putting it in a film festival. But so that reason kind of morphs the geography, the geographical logic of what the motivations for different types of movies are. I think that's what it is, right?
Yeah, and I think just one more quick thought, and then I'll shut up for a minute. But I think what's interesting is you've got companies like Kino Lorber, right, that created Kino Marquee. So they've got this whole thing figured out where they're basically taking movies and they're giving the theaters a piece. And they're basically having an online streaming platform, but they're connecting it to theaters, and audiences can decide which theater is going to share in that sale.
That's a really creative, interesting decision.
Really creative, right? Yeah. There's a Lemley's doing it too. There's a bunch of people doing this now, but you've got other companies that don't have the streaming platform or that aren't connected to a theater, but are trying to do other things like Ostasilip or however you say that. You know, they're doing drive-ins.
They're coming back.
I had a question. So we talked a little bit on the consumers, right, and how theaters and these events are trying to deal with consumers and people willing to pay to watch these films. And I kind of wanted to veer towards the filmmakers themselves, you know, the little guys that want their work to be shown. Sorry, by the way, if I'm not shown on camera, my computer's being a little finicky right now. But anyways, I wanted to say a topic that I want to bring up because not a lot of filmmakers really think about this or put this into account when they're submitting to film festivals is the dreaded DCP. or the digital cinema package. And basically, a lot of filmmakers are entering all these festivals, and then later on they find out that the festival is asking for a DCP. Little do they know, arm and a leg depending on the length of your film. How does Filmocracy Fest plan to handle this? And kind of like a brief breakdown of the DCP process.
Well, that's a complicated question. I'll just give you a couple brief answers, and then we can take it offline if you want to hear more. But I think in a nutshell, with Filmocracy Fest, it'll be a non-issue for most, because I think that most of our screenings are going to take place in non-traditional venues, and I don't need DCP for a non-traditional venue. So whether it's playing off a hard drive or it's playing on a DVD player, DCP won't be an issue. I do think that there are a number of smaller DCP houses that are kind of jumping into the mix now that'll do one for $500. Maybe some are a little bit more than that if it's over 2 hours. But I think it's going to come down to filmmakers making the choice about whether or not they feel like they want to play in bigger festivals that only play in theaters. That's really what it comes down to, because you don't need DCP for most festivals, but all the big ones that are playing in major theaters, or if they have a deal with a major chain where that's all they can play, then that's a choice you're going to have to make. But it ultimately comes down to what your goal is for playing the festival in the first place, right?
Yeah, so that's actually really cool to hear, because from what I've heard, like a lot of organizations and film festivals have deals with these DCP companies to get like 15-20% off making a DCP. So that's cool to know that you can save some monies knowing that Filmocracy Fest won't really have to deal with DCPs. Other than that, I was gonna say that with the way technology is advancing nowadays, it's really cool to hear that people can actually do their own DCPs if you're a little tech savvy on your own without having to pay. So I'm not sure to what extent it is to actually make the DCP on your own without having someone to do it for you. I just know that it is somewhat possible.
Kind of a little, I want to say sketchy at times.
I saw Sean shake his head.
Yeah, it's just because there's a lot of things that could go wrong, and you really need a QC behind it. Plus, if you're going to whatever house to get this done, whether it's a post house or a specialty house that does DCPs, they'll not only QC, but they'll probably give you a good rate on dupes. So you want several duplications, especially if you're going to have a good festival run.
Can you talk
Gotcha. Yeah, so that
Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, can you talk a little bit about how you are doing your programming for Filmocracy Fest, like what you're looking for, how it might be different from other festivals, how they select their films? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Sure. I'll just give you kind of a general overview of the kind of the goals. I mean, again, we're not a festival that's going to show 300 movies. And what a lot of people don't know is that for festivals with reputable programmers, I would say more than half of the films that play in that festival are invited. In other words, they're not coming through the submissions. They're actually approached by the festival programmers. So if we're doing our job right, as a festival programmer, what's playing in the other festivals, what's coming. And it's a little different this year because there will be some films that have played other festivals that will probably already go online first. So a lot of people may have already seen them. That wasn't the case before, where you could literally, if you were in a different community, you could know that if a film played Toronto or Sundance or South by Southwest, you could play it later in the year I did Naples for a year, a couple years ago, and we could take kind of the cream of the crop because we were later in the year, and it was a community festival, and they didn't care if it was a premiere. It was a premiere for them. That's a little different with our festival, but Aaron and I are going to look at all the entries, and we'll start ramping up. The website just kind of went through a little bit of a change last week, so we've got a video up there now, and it's just about ready. So my hunch is that we'll start getting more submissions. Our next deadline is, I believe, the 17th, and we'll have 3 more after that. So we'll have a bunch of submissions coming in. We'll put together a screening committee of people that we respect that want to chime in and contribute some time. I call that the kind of the screening committee, the first wave, if you will. The films will go through there. They get to go on our Film Freeway site. They'll rate them. They'll trickle up to Aaron and I and Paul in kind of the programming committee, if you will. And then we'll just try and have a balance. We'll try and have a balance once we know the venues. We'll balance the number of shorts with the number of features. We'll have some narratives. We'll have some docs. Depending on what trends we're seeing, there might be a spike from a certain region. It's always nice to do a little spotlight if it makes sense based on your submissions or industry trends. And, I'm a big fan of what I call cause cinema. And I think that we've kind of seen an evolution of a lot of them documentaries, but even narratives. So I think that we'll lean to some of these movies that actually have something to say, some social relevance. And I think that kind of content becomes even more valuable in a year like we're having, right? Where people are trying to connect and figure things out.
Now, just to clarify, you said cause cinema, as in a cause?
Yeah, like for a cause.
Oh, gotcha. That's interesting.
Social impact cinema. I wrote a book
that.
2 years ago called Filmmaking for Change. So that's kind of my other hat is the social impact hat.
Awesome. And John, when it comes to submitting to Filmocracy Fest, will you be part of the judging process?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely. I'll be the. Yeah, I think Paul, Aaron, and I will all be. There's typically 3 to 5 members of your programming committee that kind of sits on top of the lesser experienced screening committee folks. So yeah, I'll be making all the final choices with them, but I will see everything for sure.
Awesome. And for actually check out the podcast, you want to give us kind of like a little hint at what you look for in terms of the judging process, or you just keep that to yourself?
Well, I'll give you my review sheet overview, if you like, and then I'll just say that it's too hard to just nail, like you just know if something works and it doesn't work. But you also, I think what people don't realize is there is a lot of balance going on, right? If you have 75 coming of age stories about 20 somethings drinking a lot of coffee and drinking a lot of beer, I mean, how many of those can you show? So like you are balancing, you have, especially in LA, you've got a pretty diverse audience, but I created a review sheet years ago that I still use today, and it basically breaks down the different categories from, production value, direction, storytelling, performances, writing, so you break down those categories, you rate them on, I don't remember if it's 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, but it's kind of in there somewhere. I've used them both ways, but basically you're gauging with the screening committee all of these categories, and you can't, I personally don't think you can weigh one necessarily more than the other, but I'll just say from experience that it can be really painful if the performances are bad. Some movies that look beautiful, they clearly had a good cinematographer and the director could compose a shot, but they put a bunch of their friends in there and it just, you can't watch it. I think the performances really, really can hurt. I think the sad truth is a lot of movies go into production before the script is ready, but there's nothing you can really do. The Russo brothers' first movie, that we showed at SlamDance. I think it was 96. No, it was 97. They their movie wasn't great. They would tell you that, but you saw a vision there, right? You saw a vision behind the camera, and they had terrific energy and fun performances, and it was about hair pieces. But yeah, you knew these guys were going somewhere, even if the movie wasn't fully polished. And so it's like, I would rather see a movie that didn't have perfect production value, that had a voice and was doing something different than just like long shot, medium shot, two shot, over the shoulder, you know?
You notice the spirit in it, right? Like that's the art part of all this, is like you can't really tell until you see it, when you see it, when you feel like a spirit in something.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we talked about the 4 pillars, you know, on our website, we all believe in discovery, right? You want to find the next talent. You want to help audiences find it. You want the industry. We're in Hollywood's backyard, so we want to bring attention to emerging talent. But there's also networking and mentorship going on here too. So you might have some filmmakers come through that could learn from the mentors that come to the festival, or the ambassadors that we have. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a tradition.
I think Sean wants to say something.
Yeah, I know it's probably not this go around, but maybe for the next Filmocracy Fest. Would you look at like performance piece, like stage plays, things like that? Because I know that's kind of gotten more traction in the recent years. There was one that was a live performance. I think it was in the UK that was broadcasted. It was either National Theatre or Old Vic or something like that. But stuff like that, do you think that would be something that you guys would be interested in?
It could be. I think it depends on the personality of the festival and what they're trying to achieve. And I think, you know, I've supported a lot of films with, you know, stand-up comedians, for example, you know, on stage. And there's a lot of comedy fest out there. It's not that complicated to have a couple of different angles and somebody up on a stage. If that's it, if it's just a performance, you could definitely create a sidebar around that. And clearly there's an audience for it. And there's a lot of starving comedians trying to break in here in LA. So that could even make sense. But in terms of the type of programming, I'll say this, I never did a festival in the past that had TV pilots, right? I was a total film snob, and I'm the first to admit that, you know, I watch some good TV now, and there's some exciting things happening in that space. And so we did add a TV pilot category, a series category. So I think, look, if it's exciting and it's the arts and it's connected to movies, then we have to always consider it. But the one thing that I do see happen at a lot of what I would call kind of average festivals that just struggle year to year to get an audience or survive, is they try and just do everything. They try and do too many things.
Gotcha.
And I'd rather us not try and do too many things and do them really well.
It's all about creating a nice palette of things to, right? Like when you were saying, if there's too many of one type of movie being made, we can't unfortunately pick all of them. So, because you're trying to build like a palette, right? I feel like that's
you want to have
a way of the identity.
You want to have a diverse slate, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you've got 10 slots for your official competition section, you want that to be diverse, right? You don't want them to all be comedies and all dramas and all period pieces. Like, you kind of want a good cross section of that year's crop of films. So, and whatever you can get, right?
Because then it's almost like, when I say palette, I mean, because then you can go, what's the best blue movie? What's the best green movie? You know what I mean? Like, there's like a range of
it's the same thing, and we're saying the same thing. I think it's just a question of trying to figure out. I mean, traditionally, you would figure out, okay, I've got these 3 screens, and I've got these 3 days. So I've got this many evening slots and this many daytime slots. I like to give 2 screenings to each film if I can, and then audience have to decide what they're going to pick. And hopefully you don't put 2 dramas against each other or 2 docs against you. Like you counter program, but at the end of the day, now we've opened up the Pandora's box, right, with virtual cinema. So in theory, like, who was it? I just read an article yesterday. Oh, the Biennale, the Venice Film Festival. Mm-hmm. They took a couple of their sections and they just said, these are going to be all online now. Mm-hmm. So the game's changed a little bit. So in some ways it kind of opens things up, but then it comes back to what is your defining section going to be?
Here's to kind of, because we're kind of getting to the end of this podcast for you, I would like to wrap up sort of what you're talking about in a form I've found myself in the, you know, as technology has evolved and affected how movies are made. There's like some like good examples in the past of how physical limitations in the real world exercise creativity in the creator. Mm-hmm. I feel like film festivals are now going through that same thing where you used to have the physical limitations of the screens to be creative in how you assemble a film festival. Now, like us, creative people, where we can film as much footage and edit for as long as we want. Before you had the physical limitation of developing film and all this stuff. We have to put ourselves the limitation on ourselves. Like, okay, what is this thing? You have to put the parameters on yourself to then make the limitations make you be creative with your decisions within the virtual space. And I feel like that's what you're doing right now. It is this constant theme I see in as technology evolves, how it affects the art, the platforms, the everything, you know?
Yeah, it's a great point. I think it is true that you know, creativity will rise to the top with limitations, right? That's where a lot of the creations have all come from. But I do think
time is a limitation. Like, I gotta finish the movie at some point. How am I gonna finish?
Yeah. But Fellini said the movie's done when the money runs out.
Exactly.
Keep going. So here's the thing, though. I still believe, and this may sound really hokey given this conversation, but I still really believe that to have a successful festival, you have to figure out what your audience wants and give that to them, and you can push them, right? I showed some foreign films in communities that weren't normally used to it. Now they like them.
Nice.
You just have to do it in pieces. But the point is you still have to develop a brand that you can become recognized for. And I think, fortunately for us, Filmocracy's developing their brand right now.
Yeah. So
we will dovetail with that brand, and hopefully, you know, think a bit outside the box when we can, if it makes sense for the brand. We have a little bit of a luxury because it's a sister event, but we want, like, 2, 3, 5 years from now, you want people to be thinking about, oh, Filmocracy Fest. Okay, cool. That's the one where they have all those really unique experiences, and that's the one where they have all the mentors helping these filmmakers evolve. And that's the one where they have all that really cool thing happening over there in that, you know, parking lot.
This is where things grow.
Yeah. It's cool. It's going to be exciting.
I'm so excited.
So I think we're getting close to the end. Maybe as a last final thing, John, do you have any funny or horrible stories of things that happened at festivals in the past? All of your films blew up, somebody died, things like that.
Somebody died. I don't have any where somebody died, but I can remember a funny experience, since people seem to trigger SlamDance. I remember there was a film called No Parking. I think that's what it's called, and if I messed it up, I apologize to the filmmaker, but it was a long time ago. But anyway, we were all about stunts, and so one of the stunts was to essentially have this guy create a parking ticket. And we went up and down Main Street and put fake parking tickets on everybody's car.
Oh my God.
Amazing.
Oh my God. And so it was really funny, and it got a lot of attention. And then lo and behold, and this was early days, right? This is Sundance did not like us. The mayor did not like us. We were like these upstarts from,
Little punk rock.
Yeah, a little bit. Anarchy in Utah was our first slogan. so, yeah, we had the anarchy symbol. Actually, I still have the hat. It's got the A. I wish I brought it in here. But anyway, so I'm standing in the lobby right before his screening's going to go off, and the police come. They took me to freaking jail. It took me to jail.
Was it because of producing like fraudulent or convincing?
Yeah, well, I was the director. I guess there were 3 directors at the time, but I was the one that was kind of, I don't know, I was getting all the attention somehow. But anyway, they
blame the director.
They blamed it on me. It's like the responsible party because I was the management or whatever. So they took me to jail, and it generated a lot of press. And of course, they let me out pretty quickly. But yeah, that was a funny stunt.
Wow. So are you actually? So was it because they were convincing? Like, did they look convincing? The tickets?
Yeah, it did. I mean that.
It was more the impression that I guess that
there's a law. There's a law for it, like obstruction and whatever. I don't remember what it was.
I think
law, but it wasn't littering or anything like that because people dropping postcards everywhere. It was whatever. They're just looking for an excuse to bust me. You know.
Sure. They were they were trying to squash the bug, right? Like the
yeah. But it's fine. It's like their biggest mistake was not just embracing us because eventually they did, and look what happened. Right? They're still there.
Yep.
And I remember I got a letter from Redford. I sent him a letter after the first year. I said, just wanted you to know that we had no ill intentions here. We're independent filmmakers looking for support for our movies. And that's what you stand for, right? Supporting independent film. And they just never took that position. Like, yeah, the more the merrier. And he sent me a letter and he called me pernicious. I'll never forget it. We kept it. I still have it somewhere. But it's like, look, the director's fortnight, a lot of people don't know this. The director's fortnight in Cannes has been going for over 30 years. That's not part of the Cannes Film Festival organization.
That's a sister That's a sister thing.
Yeah, it's another fest that goes on at the same time. And if you go to Cannes, you go to films at the fortnight. Everybody just assumes it's so SlamDance has just coexisted in Park City the same time as Sundance, and that's that. But instead of taking the high road, they were really defensive the first couple of years. Eventually, Jeff Gilmore and I had a beer together, and everything was fine. But anyway, that's a pretty funny story. Going to jail.
An amazing story. Thanks so much, John. Thanks so much, John. I've learned a lot today.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's been fun.
Hey, quick question before we go. What are the estimated dates for the fest?
December 3rd through the 6th.
Okay, cool.
Perfect. Thanks, John.
Yeah, we'll probably do a press release next week, so we'll talk about it more. We've been kind of under the radar because got a lot of ducks to get in the row. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
We're close.
All right. I think that'll do it for this edition of Filmocracy Talks. I hope you
guys.
had as much fun.
Thanks for all those great questions.
Guys.
All right.
Hope you enjoyed.
What is Filmocracy? Filmocracy is a streaming community where users earn cash and prizes for watching and rating movies. Pretty good, huh? Just go to filmocracy.com today and start watching independent films for free.